All right, Zig coming in on the top. Today on the show, we have Paul Claro, drummer of the band Cinema Cinema. Cinema Cinema is a band that I failed to find a good description for because they kind of bounce everywhere in genre. They go from punk to prog to psychedelic to heavy, and every album they come out with is a new endeavor into the depths of creativity. The duo plunges through the depths of creativity with the DIY attitude, heading forward and holding back nothing to dive into a new realm of music. Their last record, when I talked to Ev, the guitarist and singer, maybe a year or so ago now, about their last record, which was like free jazz. And in this record, it takes a completely different tone. This record's called Mjolnir. Yes, like Thor's hammer for any of you Nordic fanatics. But this album is called Mjolnir for a specific reason. That reason being it features polymath percussionist Thor Harris from Swans, Angels of Light, and Shearwater. And it's one of the first times the duo becomes a trio. And the craziest part is this whole album was written on the spot. Now, I'll let Paul explain that in our conversation. We're going to listen to a tune. This is War on You off Mjolnir from Cinema Cinema. War on You. Mjolnir is the record. Cinema Cinema is the band. Check it out. It's available on all streaming platforms. So I love talking with these guys. They're really cool, real down to earth, and really appreciative of when you dive into their history and their music. And it's really easy to do that because, one, their story is fascinating, how family-based it is, and like how out of multiple generations of their family, this band formed together, and their stories about touring with Black Flag, and it's really, really cool. If you dig what you hear during this conversation, I talked with Ev a while back. If you go through the catalog of the podcast, you'll find that conversation there. So if you want to hear more, the other half the story per se, check out Ev's interview in the Zig at the Gig catalog. And if you dig what we do, if you can like, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast on any of the podcast platforms, it helps me keep talking to cool guests like Paul. Last thing before we get into this was a return to form for the Zig at the Gig podcast. I did this interview out of my van, which was our initial pitch on how to run this podcast in between shows. So there was a couple sound bips and bumps, but I don't think you'll pick up on them. You might pick up on the sweat because it was a hot day. Anywho, here's my conversation with Paul.
Sure. So I got to talk to Ev. So I got a intro. This will be a fun other perspective. You know?
Yeah.
Mjolnir is a sick album. My first question, I guess, to stay on with the new record, is it called Mjolnir because you're working with Thor?
Yeah, I guess, that was kind of our tongue-in-cheek kind of way of honoring the fact that we have an album with this amazing musician, this titan, this guy Thor, who's from the band Swans. He's been probably our favorite iteration of the band Swans. I think it was from around 2010 to 2017. Thor was in the band. In that iteration, before we even had an inkling that we might ever make an album with him. But we didn't really want to be like cinema featuring Thor. We wanted to kind of, in a, I guess, not so covert way by kind of calling the title Mjolnir. It was actually one of my rare times I get to tag a name on something. Usually Ev, he's like the conceptual kind of mastermind, and he tags all the names of the songs, and he's really creative in that way. I can't even step to him half the time because he writes all the lyrics and stuff. So but I just thought that sounded cool as a title, and I brought it up to him, and we were kind of talking about kind of on this album, Thor brings a different kind of swing to the band, and we're like, yeah, he's swinging his hammer. It's like Thor's hammer, and we just thought, he liked the idea, and we just kind of went with it. So yeah, so you are right on. That is partially why we named the album that.
I love it, man. So diving in, I kept trying to figure out why it was called Mjolnir. I didn't read the notes. My process is I listen first and then then and I'm like, what are they? Maybe lyrically, this is something to do with like mythology. And I'm like, I was diving way into it, and until like recently, I'm like, oh wait, that guy they're featuring, is that it? So that's
it's that simple. It's that simple. But that definitely guided a lot of the artwork for the album. Ed's wife Lauren does all of our artwork. She's amazing, and she did a beautiful kind of like Norse mythology kind of based album artwork. So anybody who checks it out on our Bandcamp or whatever, you can see that awesome. But that's kind of. But when we were going into the recording, we didn't have any idea that wasn't in mind in any of the kind of like improv song lyrics that Ev came up with or anything like that. That just kind of came after the fact.
That's awesome though. And I really like how, because so much of like how music's kind of distributed now and like is that add feat, you know what I mean, featuring blah from somewhere else, you know what I mean, which is that's cool to have this like spider web of creativity where everyone's working together and to kind of glean insight from the people you admire. I really dig the idea of doing a feature, but I think how you guys handle it is much more like of we're making music with this person we respect, not for the name of it, but just because we love this guy and we get that, you know what I mean? Like I think I
Totally.
really dig that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when we got the opportunity to play with Thor, we didn't know what it was going to be. We didn't know. We thought briefly we would make like a new band and we'd be like a trio, and we wouldn't even put it out as a cinema record or anything like that. Or then we briefly thought it'll be cinema featuring Thor. And as we were like mixing it and getting into it, our producer Martin Bisi, who produced this record and several of our records previously, awesome. I should bring Martin up more often in any interviews that I do, because he was really integral in creating what we have in Mjolnir, just mixing and all the post-production stuff we did on it. He was amazing. But as we were mixing and doing all that process, Martin kind of, we were, he was like one of the members of the band at this point. We were really good collaborators, friends with him. So it was kind of like saying, as we were discussing, like, oh, this is a cinema record. This sounds like, but it has this extra flavor, this extra kind of element that Thor brings. But he definitely, playing with Thor was amazing, and he definitely brought us into new directions and stuff, which we could talk about. But at the heart of it, it's me and Ev, my cousin. We've been doing this for 15 years. We're creating the foundation of this recording with our improv and our communication with each other musically. And Thor just like fell right into that. So it wasn't like it wouldn't make sense if we put it out as a new thing, and it would be disingenuous to say, this is featuring Thor. Like, we just wanted to put it out. This is the new cinema album that Thor Harris, this guy who was in Swans and other amazing projects. He's an amazing musician, multi-instrumentalist. But this is he just happens to be on the entire thing, so that's kind of how we approached it.
That's all. I do want to dive in to that process as far as working with a percussionist in a two-piece, but I wanted to ask you kind of on the topic of your cousin. So in 2003, you find a demo by Ev, and that resonated with you. Can you kind of dive into like that? Like, what struck you about his playing at that time?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, first of all, it's a dream come true to even be asked that question. So thank you. I appreciate that. This is it's really awesome. And I really do appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about this stuff. It's really cool. So yeah, it's to take me back to that time frame of what I was doing. And musically, I'd only been playing drums maybe for a handful of years. I started when I was like 9 or 10. And by I think around 2003, I was like 13. And I always knew that Ev was a band and a musician. So, this is all unbeknownst to him at the time. Like he wasn't really looking for me. Like I was just, looking for him. I just thought that he was an amazing songwriter first and foremost. I really loved. He did a lot more acoustic stuff back then. He would put out, because that was easy for him to kind of like record and put up. I remember he had a website in like 2003 and 4. Like, you had a website. I was like, there was no social media. I was like, oh man, this guy's really doing it. He's got a website. And so I could like stream his songs from the website. And I remember I had my computer, the family computer, kind of set right up next to where my drum set was. And I lived in my parents' house. Obviously, we lived in an apartment in Brooklyn, so like practicing drums and it was not like accepted, but I found a way to do it. And I remember I just, it was really cramped, and I had just enough wire to go from the computer from my headphones to my drum set, and I was able to kind of click play and play along to these drumless tracks that Ev like uploaded to the internet on his website. So like I was able to kind of make beats to his music early age, so like it was kind of like, I don't know, practice for the audition, I guess, at some point. But yeah, it's really his songwriting that really spoke to me as a younger kid, and just the fact that he was really seemed like he was going for it and putting himself out there in ways that wasn't so easy back in the early 2000s. There was no social media, the internet wasn't as vast as it is today. So it was. I really should be playing with him. Like from that, I was like, we gotta, I bust his balls about this all the time, because I'm like, I knew before he knew. I always knew. Like from when I was I knew we should play. I just had to get to the point where I could be in a position to show him what I could do. And once that happened, then everything fell into place after that, and it was like undeniable. Yes, we should be playing together. But he'll probably tell you it was all his idea. So don't listen.
No, our conversation was a little different as far as the direction of that. But but you were also playing a lot too. Like you had you played in an ensemble in Japan, right, in high school?
Oh yeah. Well, it's kind of serendipitous thing that happened. I mean, I went to a high school that had a pretty ambitious music program. They had. Sorry about that. So they had like many bands. They had like concert bands. They had jazz bands. They had when I went in there, they only had one jazz band, and I auditioned. And there were so many up and coming good musicians that were going to the school specifically for music that they created this new junior jazz band. So like I was in with like a bunch of younger kids, and we were kind of coming up and then getting to be the senior level jazz band the next year. So I spent a lot of time in my high school playing drums. Like I would get there early. We would have practice from like 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. before. Then I would be practicing like through my lunch period. Sometimes they would even pull me out of class to go. Like I would get out of math class, which was probably not the best thing because I suck at math to this day. But they would pull me out of math class to go do drums, and like it was just the coolest thing. So they were just, my point in saying all that is they were really taking that really seriously, and they really were trying to kind of progress it and bring the band out into the state. And then we got this opportunity just by happenstance. A mayor of a city in Japan happened to be a student at my high school in the 80s or 70s, and he went on to be the mayor of a city in Japan. And I don't know, it kind of became like an opportunity to just bring the jazz band internationally. They invited us to a 10-day like tour. Like we literally had a bus and we went from city to city. I stayed with a host family for like half of the trip, so that was pretty crazy. A Japanese family took me in. Like then every member of the band got to stay with a different host family, and they took us on all these crazy excursions. And every night I got to play. So that was really a formative experience. And I was only like 16 at that time to be going. I had my chaperones of my school and my schoolmates and stuff like that. But basically getting to do a tour with a band at that age in halfway across the world, it was pretty wild. But it was very kind of just a serendipitous thing. Like I don't know why or how that happened, but we were the first band of that. Now they've gone to Japan at like every year since. But my group, my year was the first one that got that opportunity to do that.
That's amazing. There's like, as far as like the whole production, there's that sense of adventure and like, I don't know, but at that age to be in a completely different place where people are like, oh, you're a musician, you're here to play. that had to be
Yeah.
pretty like kind of formative and like confirming. I don't know.
Yeah, no, especially being the drummer too. Like I was the only drummer that went on this trip. Be it that, you know, I was willing to do it and they kind of helped me pay for the ticket, and like there was other drummers in the school that were, you know, invited, but I was the only one that actually wound up making the journey. So like I was playing all the time. Like there was like two different we were doing a chorus version of the band and then we would do a jazz set, and I was the drummer for the whole time. So I would do basically a 2-3 hour set like every night, being the only drummer. Yeah. So everybody knew who I was. All the host families knew me, and like I remember my host family, my host sister, who, you know, she could host English but not that much, but she was, you know, helpful and like kind of helping me understand what was going on. And she would tell me, "Oh, everybody's so jealous that you're my host like person." Like everybody was so excited that the drummer was staying with her, and she was like so proud because it was so cool because I was playing. So it was just, you know, they were all like, I mean, they were all very welcoming to everybody, but like, it seemed like they were really, especially being a drummer, like you can kind of, you become, being the only one, you kind of stand out, right? Like I'm kind of leading the band all the time. So yeah, it was, and then I remember when we were leaving, we were like, we had it was like close to the end of the tour, and we were on the bus going from one city, and we were leaving our host families, and there was all these people that we played this like big concert, like concert hall in Japan. And as we were leaving, they were like running after the bus and like moving the bus and stuff. We were the freaking Beatles or something. So, you know, it's that good again, but at that young age, it was like, wow, this is what I dreamed of. You know, this is what I always imagined and wanted. You know.
And like they have that bite and see that it's possible, you know what I mean? Like, so like,
yeah.
Well, one, I guess during that experience musically, what was kind of like, was there like a kind of culturally like accepted, like shared experience musically? And was there like kind of like a new, like kind of culturally like introduction to music through playing in Japan?
To be honest, I wasn't really introduced to, I mean, if you mean like Japanese like traditional music, I wasn't really like introduced to that, but we did go to some like Buddhist churches and stuff, and there was some musicians there that got exposed to kind of the this Japanese, I don't know what it's called, but I did get introduced to some like eye-opening kind of like different types of instrument, like worldly kind of instruments that I'd never seen before. But you know, honestly, we didn't have a lot of time to like really enjoy or like really culturize ourselves, because we really were like the touring band. It's kind of like how it is anytime I've been on tour ever since, right? Like you kind of hit a place and you rock the place, and then you're on the next, you know, on the bus to the next spot. You know what I mean? And so I never really got to like hunker down and like really enjoy it. So like I always say, like I've been so many places, but I haven't really seen that many places because we're always just like going to the next thing, and that includes Japan. I did get to do some really cool things. Like I said, like we got to go to like some mountainous ranges that had these churches and visit some stuff, because I went to a Catholic high school, so they tried to make sure that we were being exposed to some kind of like, I guess, religious culture or something. Like you know, they tried to make it some kind of like, I'm sure that my my crazy music teacher, part of the agreement of letting us all go there was like, all right, well, I'll make it like a learning experience too, especially because we were going during Easter weekend. So like I was like a 16-year-old kid in a Catholic school away from my family on Easter. Like it was a hard sell. So I'm sure there was some kind of like back deals going on with the school. But yeah, honestly, I wish I it was so long ago. I wish I could remember more specifics. It's like a dream to me now, you know, like.
Yeah. Still, that's amazing though. Like, so your crazy music teacher, how like, crazy in a good way, or are we talking like inspiration crazy, or are we talking about, oh my God, how are we gonna pull this off crazy?
I mean, it was. You mean like the trip was crazy, or like
no, like the teacher? You said the teacher was a crazy teacher. Like like how so?
He was crazy because I mean he was amazing, and he built that music program from like the ground up. He was a really like like a forward thinking kind of, visionary kind of guy. Like, and he was a touring musician, touring trumpet player in various types of, like, he was in mariachi bands, he was in concert bands. So he was like a lifer, you know what I mean? Like, really loved music, and probably similar to you, man. I mean, like, he was a teacher. He was a teacher, but he was like a musician. You know what I mean? He really wanted everybody to like execute and be serious. I had a couple of like Whiplash moments. Have you ever seen the movie Whiplash, where he's like throwing a pencil at my head because I'm going too fast? Like, he really wanted it to be good. So I think that he was like really ambitious in growing the program, because the more he grew the program, the more funding they would get and the more opportunity they would get to get good musicians. Like, I remember when I first auditioned to be in the school, what's the word? Scholarships for music. And then by the time I graduated, people were getting like really good scholarships to come to the school specifically to play music, because he had grown it so much, you know what I mean, from the time that I started to the end. And like, it was attracting really good musicians, and then the band would get better and better. So I don't know, by this point, I don't even know if I tried out for the band today, I might not even get in. But he was really like ambitious. And I think that big swing of going to Japan was a risk, like, I mean, it was all on him to make sure that we all got there and got home safe. And I mean, it was like 40, 50 kids that went, it's a big,
that's crazy.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
It was wild.
Like, it's across the world, not just like the state. Oh gosh.
Dude, we were on a plane.
Yeah.
Hours, all these kids, just like, I had never been on a plane before, like, it was just, thinking back on it now, it's like, I can't believe we pulled that off. But what a formative thing. It's such a from my youth that I have kind of built upon to this day. I don't even realize it again, because it's almost 20 years ago. It feels like a fever dream that I even did that. But it actually, to be honest, it's helped me in my life in other ways too. Like, I was able to kind of utilize that I work at a bank, a Japanese bank right now. That's like my day job. So like, I was able to kind of be like, well, I stayed with a host family, and I know the culture. Like, and it helped me at that, 10 years ago when I started a very like entry level position. It helped me like get a job, like, it's not something that everybody can just pull out of their back pocket. Like, oh, I went to Japan and stayed with a host family and did a tour and all this stuff, so.
Well, neither is I toured with Black Flag too. Like,
oh yeah.
I don't know if the bank looks at that the same way.
Well, to be honest, the bank was awesome with that too, because they were willing to give me a leave of absence to go do that. I literally,
that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. I sat down and with my, the head of the department, and I wrote, they made me fill out this like form, and basically the form, it was like the reasons why. I'll never forget this. Reasons for your leave. Like, well, explain to me why you want this. Give me the pitch.
Yeah.
And I wrote down, it's literally like, I would like to have the opportunity to go pursue my dream. Like, I literally wrote that down on the piece of paper and gave it to my my like superiors and these are like banker guys and very serious. And it just turned out to be that the GM of my department was a music fan himself. Actually happened to be a drummer himself. And it all just like, it was crazy, man. Like the some of the signposts in my life where I've could have gone one way or the other. It seems like music has always kind of led me the right way, and I wind up meeting the right people, or and even with being in this band with my cousin, we happen to be born in the same family and be similar enough and like similar types of music enough. And I happen to be a drummer and he happens to be a guitarist. Like, all these crazy things that kind of led me to where I am today and let me do the things that I've been able to do with my band. I mean, it's pretty crazy. But yeah, I mean, specifically with this, I mean, they approved that and let me go. And that's what ultimately allowed me to go on the tour with Black Flag. And then, once that was done, as all tours come to an end at some point, I was able to come back to a job, which was huge, So yeah, it's pretty wild.
No, it's incredible, and I think there's something to that, like, people, if you meet the right people, when you're moved by the not the right things, but when you're moved by things, people pick up on enthusiasm, and they can, once it resonates with the right person, like the guy who also has a Black Flag shirt, you know what I mean? Like, who's, who's doing some teller job, like, they pick up on that, and like, but to kind of like dive into like serendipical like things, like, so from what I understand, you're your uncle and your dad also played in a band, and that's how you and Ev started playing together? Was through like the generation before's band?
Yeah, I mean, kind of. Yeah, I mean, so my dad is a guitarist and a songwriter, and that was always around when I was growing up. That's how I got into music. My mom was into music too, and my family in general was, into music. But my dad was a musician and wrote his own songs, so it was always like in the house. He was always playing stuff. So I knew that he was a musician. I didn't know until years later that he was also in a band with Ev's father. I don't know how much they like did any gigs or anything, but they definitely had a band and they had a name and they were writing songs together. My dad and Ev's dad, and their relationship was based in music from the beginning. So, and Ev's dad was an amazing guitarist in his own right. So, Ev's dad, and maybe you talked about this previously, but Ev's dad kind of, taught him how to play guitar and kind of gave him the keys to like the foundation to become the amazing musician that he is. Whereas, my dad, I tried to learn guitar when I was really young. I remember I was like 8 or 9 years old before the drums. And it was too much. I was kind of a small, diminutive kid and I couldn't really like make the chords happen, it was too much pain on my fingers. So I gave that up really quick, and I gravitated towards drums, which is its own story. But my dad still instilled in me from that young age, the idea of being a musician and playing music and writing your own songs from a very young age. So me and Ev both had that from our fathers, who, growing up, they were friends and in a band. Yeah, that's totally true.
That's incredible. Like,
yeah.
And like, though, like at that time you may not dive in and like stick with it, did all the things like he was showing, those things like seep in. So like, what type of do you remember the name of the band?
I do.
What is it?
I do.
What is
I
it?
do. It's, I'm sorry, Dad, if you're listening to this and you don't want this to be known, but you know what? It should be known. It should be honored. It's a good name, and it's a good, solid 70s classic rock kind of name. It's Cold Steel. That was the name.
Yeah, that's sick.
I know. It's pretty awesome. You can see the T-shirt right now.
Yeah,
I could see it.
Like the 70s like foreigner looking font.
Exactly.
Cold Steel. Like that's sick.
Yep. Yeah. So I know that it was Cold Steel, and they were. My dad is very much, especially at that time, he was really into like Cat Stevens and like Bruce Springsteen and stuff like that. I'm not so sure what Ev's dad. I'd have to ask him what his dad was into. I'm not really sure, but so I assume the kind of music that they were making was kind of like I don't know how to say it. It wasn't like heavy. You would think Cold Steel sounds heavy, but I don't know if they were like super like Black Sabbath-y kind of like that. They were probably a little more maybe the Foreigner thing, like you said, maybe something closer to that realm. But unfortunately, I've never heard any Cold Steel recordings. I don't know if there's any that can be dug up, but that would be an interesting thing for me to bring up to my dad next time I see him.
That'd be awesome. Like,
yeah, I'd love to hear that.
It's interesting because like to kind of dive into your own realm of thing is to have like this kind of understanding of yourself and what you want to do. Like what I mean? Like to write your own anything is, especially if it's a song, you got to understand my voice, how far it can go, how low it can go, and like really there's that kind of development of who I am in this picture of things and what am I influenced by. And like, that's such a like lofty lesson, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because we're all kind of defining ourselves by the people we enjoy and we want to sound like, but we always come out sounding like us, but with a tint, a shade of whomever that is, And like that's a like what you guys do is so original and so like you're cinema. There's nothing like you guys, which is so sick. And like to kind of be around that's a super important lesson, even if it wasn't like this is what you need to do. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, totally. I mean, and I'd be remiss to say that if I didn't say that my dad in general was a really big influence on me musically, period, because I got to, from a very young age, like he would write his own songs, right? So when I was learning drums and figuring it out and getting a little better, like I got better by playing with my dad to his songs and writing drum parts to songs that, you know, I weren't on the radio. Like these were original songs that I couldn't copy something that somebody else did. I had to think and make my own beats and my own kind of orchestration of his acoustic songs that he was writing. And me and my dad, before me and Ev even played, and there's kind of a tie into how me and Ev started playing kind of because of my dad. But you know, me and my dad were our own little two-piece before any of that. You know, we would play like talent shows, and we would play, like, there was like a community show that we would do every year. That kind of also ties into things. But yeah, me and my dad would do gigs together, and we would, you know, he would write a song or I would write a song and he would like play it with me. Like we were collaborating from like a very young age for me. So like that was huge, especially the creative side, right? Being able to kind of just create, and like what kid really gets the opportunity to be like in a pseudo band with his dad writing drum parts to songs that, you know, didn't exist before. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I'm not listening to songs and trying to make up stuff. I'm literally learning by doing, you know. I've kind of come to reflect on that recently. And yeah, I just wanted to say that about my dad for sure.
That's it. Well, and just like if you bypass the idea of like music, you're speaking on like level playing field. Your voice now matters equally as much as your parental figure. You know, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like in the grand scheme
totally.
of thing, it's a pretty large like. You know what I mean? Like, and that's, you know, way parent or child probably thinks of that during the moment. There's no way, like,
totally.
I'm on the same playing field as my father. You know what I mean? Like, no one's thinking of like that, but it is. And like to know that your opinion and like what you have to say and how you move the tune is as valid as the guy leading it is like you said, a huge, I mean, if anything's going to set a path, that's going to be a like a car.
It's these,
I guess.
Yeah, totally. It's inroad. I mean, and that young age too, for me specifically, like the inroads in my brain chemistry, however my brain was developing. Like it's the drums and creating music and stuff. That's just like in my DNA. You know what I mean? From that young age, and it's just kind of. I don't even remember a time before that, you know, like I've always been doing this, and I've always been doing it with family, you know, which makes it even more special. And that's what, you know, I think the special thing that me and Ev have, and what I, you know, always dreamed of, like when I was, you know, in 2003, finding his music and loving all of his songs and dreaming of being in a band with him one day. Like I feel like we're the greater than the sum of the parts. You know what I mean? Like when we're together, we push each other in a good, healthy way. Like we want to see each other do better. And it's like, oh, I'm going here. Can you get there too? Oh, you can? Oh, you motherfucker. Okay. I'm going to go higher. You know what I mean? Like, it's like this push and pull, and not like competitive, but it's almost like if we were brothers, it might not work as good because there might be more competitive edge, but because we're cousins, it's this like really loving thing where we're just like, yes, we pass the ball to you, and now you take the shot. And then, okay, I'm going to pass. Like, it's very even distribution of I can't think of the word, like this, just the even distribution of like, we both are bringing equal parts to it. And it makes this whole thing. And because we're family and we both have that background that we've already talked about, I think that we achieved something that's special. And I'm not saying it's better than anybody. It's just like you said, there's nothing like it because of, you know, what we both bring to it and this special kind of connection that we have musically that, you know, it could have easily not have happened. You know, like I could have went another way in my life, and he could have went another way in his life. And maybe, you know, we wouldn't have ever played together, and what a travesty that would have been. But the way that everything kind of worked out, that we were both in the same family and we both play the instruments that we do, and we were at the right time to kind of develop together musically. Yeah, man, I get emotional kind of talking about it. Like, it's really blows my mind, especially the older I get, looking back on being 18 and doing all the things that we did from that time in 2008 to now. Like, it gets just gets better and better. I can only say that. It just keeps getting better, which is awesome.
Well, yeah, like that, and it should be an emotional thing. That's a beautiful connection. There's a lot of bands that are putting together and doing it, but not from like the roots like that. That's so cool, and like that definitely. That's the cinema of it. I don't know what it is you guys have, but it's there, and like that's super beautiful, and it's a very inspiring thing because you guys go from. You record something for your dad, right? That's when you and Ev play together for the first time?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, like I think it was like around 2007. It was before, we even had an idea of me and Ev ever really playing together. But that was the first time I think we realized that that it could be done, because we were recording my dad's songs, and I was in another band at the time. And my band had recorded at this studio, and my dad had his songs. I was like, hey, this guy's affordable and he's a nice guy. Like, it was some studio in Queens, and I was like, we can make we have all these songs of yours, Dad. Like, let's record them. And again, I was living at home obviously at that time, and me and my dad play the songs all the time. So like I knew the songs. So and of course, Ev had just moved back recently he had lived in California for a while, and then he moved back to Brooklyn. And we were kind of like reconnecting, and we had gone over his house a few times, and I got to see his CD collection, and he would give me little mixes of cool songs to check out. So we were already kind of reestablishing our connection as older people, he didn't see me as just a little kid anymore. Cause I think the last time we had really connected, I was much younger. So he lived in California for a couple of years. So I didn't see him for a while, but then, when he came back, we reconnected. And so the idea of me and my dad doing a recording, the first thing we thought of is maybe Ev would come and just play on it. And Ev never heard any of the songs. He just came and did some cool solos and some, just added extra guitar to it. And it was literally the three of us in the studio cutting it live. And the way the drums were set up is I was facing the wall, so I wasn't even facing them. And I just remember, many times during that recording session, just locking in with Ev, from that, the very first take of the first song, it's like something was happening, and we were really projecting those songs, and the recording came out really cool. And we have that exists somewhere today, where you can hear the first time me and Ev ever played together, and it's through my dad. Again, he was the conduit for a lot of that, and we connected kind of through the recording process of that thing for my dad. So after that, I think the wheels started turning, and we were again, for me, it was I'll audition for Ev too, to be showing Ev, hey, this is where I'm at right now musically. This is what I can kind of do, and then we kind of sat on it for a little while, and kind of did our own things. And I was in another band, and then eventually Ev came to see my band play. Maybe not a direct result of that, but he knew that I could play because we played together with my dad for that recording. And then eventually he came to see my band play, and then the rest is kind of history after that. But yeah, it all kind of started with that recording with my dad.
That's incredible. And and then to go from that to touring and doing the real deal, road style punk rock, life, you know what I mean? And with the music you guys do, that's it's your, I'm saying, there's no other sound like cinema. Which is even more us against the world. And when you have that roots connection in a good way, you know what I mean? It's we have this cool thing we love, we want to share it. And then to hook up with Greg Ginn, and really get to do that on that level. You can't go into this narrative with all this amazing roots and not see something like that come out, you know what I mean? Which is so cool. And to continue to not morph to what worked on those Black Flag tours and just keep doing what you guys are doing and still wind up working with your heroes like Thor, I think speaks so highly of the idea that if you have a thing you believe in and a crew that can get behind it, it's the way to go.
Yeah, I totally agree. And very fortunate with a lot of the opportunities that we had and a lot of the people that we've met. And it just seems like everything we do kind of leads to another thing. And because we are who we are, and, maybe because of, kind of what you said, people recognize what we're doing, and that we're not in it for any kind of ulterior motives, especially at this point. Like, we really believe in like what we've created, and we feel like we've kind of invented something with the band. Like, we have something that's unique and something that it's not like, God forbid one of us dies, we're not gonna like fill in for it's over at that point. Like,
Yeah.
No one's gonna fill in for, like, it's gotta be the two of us. And like, I think that's its own special thing. Like, nobody else can, I don't think there's ever gonna be a cinema cover band, no matter if we ever get like super famous. Like, I don't even think I could cover the songs on Mjolnir at this point, like, because we'll get that. But like, ultimately, I think that these people we've been lucky enough to work with, and we've been able to, there's a through line that you can follow from when we made the record with Don Z and Tara, Manic Children and the Slow Aggression, that came out in 2010. That like propelled us into meeting a lot of people through that area, because Don Z and Tara produced that, and I was at Inner Ear with all the all the Fugazi, Minor Threat stuff, right? So like, getting the opportunity to do that kind of led us to meeting Howard Wolfing, who is our publicist, and then Howard has introduced us to so many people, and including, that's how we got to meet Thor. So like, there's everything that we've done has kind of led us to the next thing. And I think that it's partially because people, when they meet us, or when they meet us as people and talk to us as people, they can tell that there's a real love between me and Ev, and we love to do this. And it's like, we're not going to stop. We're not going to change. We're always going to progress, because, we have to do it. It's just like it's not like we're never going to hang it up, because there's always something to do. There's always, like, even right as we're talking right now, me and Ev have like, we don't live as close as we used to. So we're already figuring out ways to do home recordings. And I've kind of have a drum set up in my house now where I can mic it, and we're sending tracks back and forth. And maybe that'll be the next album or the next phase of the band, like, we're always moving to the next thing. So that forward momentum, I feel like people like, the Greg Ginns and the Don Z's, Taras, and the Martin BC's and the Thors, and all these people, they can kind of sense that. And they're willing to play with us, and work with us because, of who we are as people, but also as musicians.
Was it? Well, all those are the DIY roots, like the DIY leaders. You know what I mean? Like with Don and like, and like, I think that's really well said. And like, Howard's great. You know what I mean? Like, it's the community you develop is the type that is moved by someone doing it by themselves or by themselves, right?
Yeah.
And like, that's such an important thing because that shows the next whoever's watching that they can do it too. And like, there's no more honest like route for a musician or a creative than that, and like, not that there needs to be an honest route, but there is one, not that anyone else is doing it wrong. I don't want to put anyone else down, but like, that's just one aspect of what's so inspiring about what you guys do. I wanted to kind of unpin that thing with Thor. So like, talking about recording and really locking in the Ev during that first like session. So now you guys are working with a shared hero. How do you like go about locking in with your like with your partner in crime, but also like locking in, especially as a drummer, with a percussionist? You know what I mean? Like with an extra flavor. How did that kind of look? What was that? Was it weird at first? Did it gel really well?
Yeah, I mean, it was. I don't know. I guess I went into it like really open and just excited and just wanted to do my best that I possibly could. I mean, we only had that day. We did one day of record.
Wow.
And we did. After the fact, once Thor left, I mean, we did more work on the record and edited. But like the core, the 80%, 90, almost I would say 85% of what you hear on the record was all done in one day with Thor. Right? We did basically. He showed up. And we like to say he showed up arms swinging. He didn't have any instruments or anything with him. He just he kind of just appeared magically. And that was literally the first time we met him and even said hello or shook his hand or anything. So, and then literally, you know, we went right down to the studio in BC Studios, and Martin BC, who integral in this whole process too. I mean, he helped kind of cobble together a bunch of stuff for Thor to use, like there was like leftover drums, and there was a synth keyboard. I had some drum pieces, so Thor within a matter of minutes had kind of created this little set around him. This little it was the Mjolnir setup basically is what he created from just what was there and what we had. So I didn't even know what he was gonna do. Like you couldn't even prepare for what was gonna happen because we didn't even really know so what it was gonna sound like. So we were kind of learning and growing together. But basically what we did was 3 30-minute jams. We would do 30-minute sessions and then stop and have a hug and be like, that was awesome. Yeah. And then we would go listen to it and make sure it was all sounding good, and it was sounding good. And then after the fact, you know, we went and carved out the parts that like were going to be the songs, and like, oh, this is the great jam that we made into a song. So, so like by the end of the first 30-minute jam, we were, you know, swinging and doing, I mean, it was, you couldn't even think about it, you know, because it was just all happening, you know. So I don't even really remember. I just remember feeling feels good, and it's moving, you know, and we're all three of us are kind of like passing the baton and doing different things. And the one thing that really stood out to me, like from the first 30-minute session, is what ultimately led to be the song War on You, which is track 2 on the album. Yeah. We were like kind of crash landing a jam. And we were, you know, pretty exhausted at that point. And this is just goes to show, like, you know, you gotta, you know, you're listening, and this is all being made up on the spot, and we're just figuring each other out, pushing each other. Thor has got the keys, which has given us a different flavor. And he hadn't really like surprised me with a drum beat yet. Until the kind of, if you've listened to Mjolnir, the War on You kind of opens up with a hi-hat kind of like, I don't even know, it's like 16th notes, but it's like triplet. I don't even, it's really awesome. That's Thor. And this is at the end of we had just done 20 minutes of improv jamming, exhausted, like excited. So much is going on. We're like, wow, this is crazy. And then we're done. And then Thor just goes, and I'm like, oh shit. Okay. Now we got to do something now. So, that was exciting. You know, it perked my ears up, and it made me kind of have to follow what he was doing. And he kind of led us into that what that whole track became to be was started by Thor. So that's kind of one example of reacting to another drummer. And by the second kind of jam, we got way more comfortable doing kind of dueling drum stuff. And that's all over the record, really. But it was really introduced by that. You know, I've never played before where I've heard all of a sudden it's a hi-hat and I'm not doing it, you know, like that. Yeah. You know,
was there a particular type of music, like musical signature that you recognize from like Swans recordings that was very much Thor, that when you're jamming, you're like, oh shit, there it is?
Oh, there's the Thor right now.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, what he was doing with Swans, I mean, there was parts where, you know, I didn't even know what he was doing. You know, I didn't even know what he was doing. Like he was playing spoons or stuff, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. But there was a part, I think this is on Walk Into the Ocean, where if you listen, there's 2 drum tracks that complement each other really well on that song. And he's kind of doing like a kind of a tribal kind of like back and forth on the toms, like and I'm underneath going boom, 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 like that. And that stuck out to me as like, oh man, like he's kind of doing like a real percussion. Like this is like, I could hear this in like the opening track of like one of the Swans records or something. So I mean, but I don't know if he played synth or anything on any of the Swans stuff. And we had certainly never had a synth or any kind of keyboard or anything in any previous cinema stuff, even the stuff that we had done ourselves. Maybe, you know, Ev would put like synths to bed something on one of the tracks, but like nothing where it was like, this is the kind of the lead thing. And on Mjolnir, I mean, Thor is doing crazy staccato kind of synth stuff, and like he's doing chordal progressions that are really cool. And that's something new, I thought, that I hadn't even heard really in any of the Swan stuff that I heard him play on. So I didn't even know he was going to bring that to the table, you know? So that was really cool. I think specifically on the song Riverhead, it kind of opens up with like an organ. That whole song was created because Thor played the organ and brought that sound out. And we had never had that soundscape ever presented to us in a song for cinema before. And it kind of opened up different brain channels. Like it made us think of different, like I was thinking of like Jeff Buckley, like Lover I Should Have Come Over, like shit like that, like almost like a ballad, you know. And it, like, we don't really have ballads in cinema, but you know, him playing the having that synth there really helped us create a couple of tracks from that we probably would never have had. So but yeah, that's something that I don't think he even really brought to Swans. I wish I would have had the time to ask him, because as quick as he appeared, he was gone. Like we didn't really get to like chat about it, like, you know. So like it's pretty wild when you think about it. Like he just appeared, played, and then he was like, all right, love you guys, that was great, and then he went on to his next thing, you know.
Sick. Like, well, that's the touring life, I guess, musically in recording. Like, so everything you guys brought to the table, those are all fresh ideas. Like that was all in that room, right? Or was there some lingering riffs that came from other ideas?
I think when we first we were first sitting down to think, okay, he's coming in like 2 weeks. Like we only got like one shot at doing this. Like what do we want to do? Like what are we going to do? Like what is it going to be? And, you know, we always knew that we were going to do jamming and all that stuff, but like we were kind of getting in our own heads about it. Me and Ev, like overthinking it. Like maybe we should have some prepared pieces and present that to Thor and be like, hey, do you like this? Like, let's do it. And maybe we had like one or two things that we thought were just very skeletal riff ideas or beats or whatever. And then as we were talking about it and thinking about it more earnestly, and we were getting closer to the date, I think we got to the point where we were like, why would we box ourselves into having to perform something that he's never heard or that we don't really know? Like, let's just scrap all that and not even bring that up. Let's just see what happens, and we'll get in there and we'll do what we always do, and, you know, just hope that it'll be good on the other side. So I think by the time we got there, you know, those riffs and some of those ideas that me and Ev had talked about, those were just swirling around in our head. So that they come through here and there, and they actually were very helpful as kind of being kind of like signposts on the path. And like when we needed like a new kind of idea, Ev would maybe go into a riff, and I'd be like, oh yeah, I think he played that for me a month ago. Like, let me follow along with that. But I would say that only happened maybe less than a handful of times, like maybe one or two times. There was like, oh, there's these riffs that we have, there's these ideas that we had that we didn't have any structure to. It was just a flame of an idea that we then brought up in the, you know, because again, we did 90 minutes of jamming. At some point we were extended as far as we could go, and it's just like, oh, that's something that we can go to, that we can extend this even further, and it led us to other things. So yeah, so, you know, for the most part, it was 100% made up on the spot. Like, and a lot of the lyrics and the vocals that Ev did, the performance, that was all mostly done on a scratch mic that he just did on the spot. Specifically, My Vision of the Future, which is my favorite song, one of my favorite songs I think we've ever put out, a song I'm very proud of. All the vocals on that is totally on the spot, made up performance, you know, that he did. So yeah, it's pretty wild. But there was a couple of little tidbits of ideas that we kind of threw in there, but nothing that we ever presented to Thor or said, hey, this is what we're gonna do. You know, like we did none of that.
Gotcha. Because like one thing I was like, I mean, there's a lot of specific dates. like do you know? That might be an Ev question, but do you know the significance of those dates?
I know the significance of those dates. I don't know if they're not real. You know, those were Ev kind of specific. So I don't know if I can like go delve into everything about what happened on those dates, but I will say that Ev, there's something specific that it's called, and I don't know if he's like been diagnosed with it. Diagnosed sounds bad. It's not a bad thing. It's like he has this thing where he can recall dates really, really well. He knows like the day he bought a certain record that like changed his life, and like it was a Wednesday, May 12th, 1992. Like he knows that like, and where he was. Like he can recall things like that, and especially stuff that is important to him and dates for cinema. Like he can remember like random show we played, like, and what day of the week it was and what the date was. So it's not surprising. Like, and as he's kind of like, verbal vomiting all these words and just making up stuff, it wasn't a shock to me listening back that he was throwing out a lot of dates, because that's kind of just how his mind works, it's and it actually made for some really cool lyrics, and some of the dates that he's talking about are, maybe not great things that happened, and it dictated kind of like what he was talking about in the moment in those jams that wound up being the lyrics, quote unquote, to the songs,
That's incredible. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it was just full on creativity, like just being able to just go in there and not worry about, and that's something that me and Ev have always done. Like we don't ever like censor each other or tell each other don't do that, or maybe, unless it's constructive criticism. But for the most part, like I don't really get into his world. I don't tell him, hey, unless I have a really good idea, like, hey, those lyrics don't sound good there, or that riff should be this or whatever. Like we pretty much say yes to each other all the time, and like we're always supportive and each other's biggest fans. And I think adding Thor into that, that kind of like improv, like improv comedy, right? That yes and kind of thing. Like you never saying no, like always going to the next thing. We were, all three of us were really open-minded, and really we were there to do it, and we were happy to be doing it, and we just wanted to make something good. And that, as the basis of the whole project from the very beginning, made it very freeing and allowed for some of the coolest stuff we've ever done to be created, because it was totally just like we were at our creative zenith, because we couldn't do anything else. We had to be, like we were just, if we didn't try, it wouldn't be good. We know that it wouldn't be good. So we had to kind of meet the challenge, of like, okay, what is this going to be? And going into it, me and Ev are very, very comfortable playing together, obviously. But I think that comfort level also makes, whenever we have a collaborator or a third person, that makes them kind of comfortable, because we build a really good foundation for other people to kind of jump in and tap dance on, and then they get comfortable, and then they can take the ball. And, it's this really communal kind of like pulsating thing that we did, especially on this record. And I think, being that open and willing, and that's what you have to be in improv in general. But I mean, to have the balls to say, okay, we're going to do this, and we're going to put this out as a record, like whatever it is. Like, I mean, if it totally sucked, I'm sure we would have hit the shelf. But when we went back and listened to it, and you can hear all that creativity, and it's just like, there is a lot here. And then the next step in the process was kind of excavating the best of it and cultivating the record from that.
Well, yeah, and it's cool that it's such an important thing to be able to yes and whoever you're playing with and make that comfortable, so they can do whatever they feel. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's expanded to like a conversational level. You know what I mean? Like, to be able to welcome someone into that. You know how good it is to feel like you're in the group when you're hanging out with some guys that have like the inside bits, and they're like, "Oh, you get it." You know what I mean? Like, like that's such a human thing. Whatever that feeling is, that need to like, or that excitement to be in that type of like, or the fun that comes from that type of connection. So to be able to do that musically. The one thing I think is really important with this is like, you guys went in with your rough draft. You just wrote, you free wrote whatever. And then like, I think the bigger lesson is, out of that free write is where those deep seated ideas come from, Yeah. And the fact that you're able to excavate it and make it into this like sick record is just like I think it speaks highly of that method, and I think that's a method a lot of people. There's so many people that are afraid to play something because they're afraid to play it wrong or say something. You know what I mean? So like they know that like it comes from doing it wrong, or not doing it wrong, but just doing things and being like, that's not the greatest, but 3 seconds later, that's where we cut it. You know?
Yeah.
Like that's a fascinating. And like to kind of like, hey Paul, I really appreciate your time, man, and I dig you guys. I dig what you stand for, and I dig your music. What you guys, I mean, clearly you're working on more, but is there anything like in the works that's kind of closer to coming out or closer to finalizing a project, a tour?
Yeah, I mean, we're always got things on the burner. Me and Ev, we have a weekly call that we never miss. Like we always to keep each other kind of like, of course we just love to talk to each other. We could talk all day. Like we never somehow haven't gotten sick of each other after 15 years, but we're always meeting up to say, what's the next thing? What are we doing? I mean, as I speak to you right now, we have a gig tonight in Brooklyn. And then tomorrow, the next day we're playing in Catskills, New York, upstate. So we're focused on that. We're still kind of promoting this album, obviously, and we'll be doing that throughout the rest of the summer and the fall, and maybe doing some more gigs in the fall. We have a gig coming up in October that I don't want to date this too much, but we have a gig coming up in Boston. So we have some things on the docket directly related to this album, and there'll probably be more tours, and hopefully, I mean, at some point, if it can work out, the idea of maybe doing a couple of shows with Thor somewhere down the line.
Yeah.
That's something that he's brought up. So it's not, like he brought it up, not me. I'm not saying it. I'm bringing it up now, but that's only because he said it. So like, ultimately, I don't know. I've learned to never really get like hopes up for anything. I didn't even, until Thor stepped foot in the studio that day, who knew if he was even going to come? You know what I mean? Like I just take things as they are, and it's all good. So we'll see what happens with that. But that is a possibility, and that would be freaking awesome if we could do some shows with Thor, whether it's up here or he's based in Texas. We played in Texas a bunch because that's where Black Flag was kind of based back in the day. So so like that's potentially in the works, and then also we have another record kind of in the can. I don't know if I want to give too much away about that, but it's another kind of improv record. We're not sure when we're going to put that out. I mean, obviously the work for that will start probably, as soon as possible, because then it takes so much time to figure out, okay, when you're going to release it. Are we going to do it digitally? Are we going to do it for like all that release stuff? So that process starts pretty early. So there will be more revealed about that, but we'll see. I mean, we're also working on kind of home recordings and figuring out what we're going to do with some of those, if we're going to, put that out. But right now we're actually in the process of getting another record mastered that we have in the can, and then figuring out like what we're going to do with that. So, it's just a never ending stream of stuff all the time with cinema.
Man. Yeah. No, it's the best. Like, two things, one, that creative process never is over. As soon as you're done with the thing you're doing now, you're halfway through the next. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if you're not, there's something going on.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like,
and we're also writing another record. Like we haven't put out like a song record. Like, hey, these are our songs. These are like songs that we've been playing live, songs that we're working on. Like that's the stuff that we play live, and we haven't recorded those yet, but we're also still writing those to go on an actual, traditional, I guess I could say, cinema record. So that's going on while all that other stuff is going on. So the creative process, it never ends. And like you said, that's perfectly. If you're not doing it, then something's wrong.
Something's up.
Yeah.
I love it. And like to build off that, you never know if it. You know what I mean? Like, it's like all the good things that happen, there's that one bad thing that's going to happen, and hopefully all those bad things that happen, that one good thing happens. So all the no's you get, hopefully the yes comes through, or all the gigs that fall through, hopefully that the crazy email you send goes well. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And like,
totally. I mean, it's like having at bats, like we like to say, like we're baseball fans. If you give yourself enough at bats, eventually, you'll hit a home run, or you'll get a single at least, like that's it. But you have to keep going up to bat to get the chances,
Exactly. No, and I think that's well said. And learn, there's also the acceptance of that didn't pan out. Next thing, that's a whole nother mindset to be able to like captivate and like hone, because like it's some stuff is so cool, and then when it falls through, you're like, what am I doing?
Yeah, man. I mean, and you put so much work and effort and time, especially like with this record. I mean, this has already been like one of our most successful records that we've ever put out. It's getting a lot of like streams, and like already like some of our top songs on like Spotify and Apple Music or whatever are from this album. So it's definitely getting and it's getting good reviews and stuff. So I'm very proud, very happy. But in my mind, it should be even bigger. But like I'm happy with where it is at. I'm very proud of where it's at. But soon enough, it's like you got to move on to the next thing. You got to move on to the next at bat. Like maybe this one we didn't score the run on this one, but we got on base, and now the next one maybe that'll score the run or something. You know what I mean? Like you don't. You got to keep the forward progress, and the challenge will be, how do we like build off the momentum of this in the right way, and how do we make it, how do we put out what did we learn from this process that we can take into the next process? Because part of being in a band these days is not just being creative in your music and what you actually create, that you put out there in the world, but it's how you put it out there in the world, how you communicate it to people. And it's such a minefield today with social media and figuring out how to get streams, and like, do I try to go viral on TikTok? Like, I mean, we're not a TikTok friendly band to begin with. So, and I think most of the people that would be into our band are like too old for social media at this point. So, so it's a challenge, but that's part of what, we're kind of learning that as we go, like, I guess everybody, but, trying to figure out the best way to, put out the next thing. Like, we're already kind of thinking about that because of the lessons we learned from this one,
Was it, because my band, we've been trying to figure out the same bit too. We've been doing, we got so many stupid promotional reels we film of us just being goofy, stupid people.
Yeah.
Which we're making it fun for ourselves. But the one thing I think I've learned, no matter what you're doing, there's kids that are into it. There's adults that are into it. There's people that are into it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So like, and with what you guys are doing, there's definitely someone picking up a Swans record being like, who did this? What did they do? What they did that guy's with who are they? Especially, you know what I mean? So like, and with what you guys do, the purity of it, that's going to translate no matter where. So
can only hope, Zig. I hope.
I love it, man. All right, man. Thank you so much for your time. This has been a wonderful conversation. I'm glad we got to make it up and have it.
Yeah, likewise, man. Thank you so much for having me. I was looking through, I've listened to a few of your episodes. I love what you do. Man. Yeah, man. And you've had some really amazing people on. So, I mean, you've had like Ian Mackay, and you've had like Kevin Eastman. Like, I like, what the hell? Like, I'm just honored to be now, like, whatever this does, I hope this does well for you, but I'm just honored to be in that people can scroll past my name to all the other cool names on the list. So it was an honor, man.
Doing the DIY ethos that they've done. So this is just a celebration. It's a search for insight, and you're doing it, man.
Awesome, man. I'm proud to be on it.
Oh, man. Me and my, so off the record, me and my bass player, we took his daughter to her first movie. Right.
Wow.
I'm in a car doing this because we got. Oh, okay. That's why I was like, it's going to be 5 minutes. It's going to be 5 minutes late.
Oh, you're just coming out of the movie.
Right. So I do this a lot. Where like in between nursing home and teaching gigs, I just park the car. And like,
that's awesome.
As opposed to writing, I do one of these. And like
That's so great.
She saw the Ninja Turtle movie, and it was awesome.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Was it good?
It was great. Kevin Eastman's in it for a minute.
No shit.
Yeah. He's got a little cameo.
That's awesome.
It was so cool. Yeah. And she was like a big TV. Whoa. First time ever. You know what I mean? Like it was a great experience.
That's so awesome. And get him on that shit early. That's the good stuff. And then eventually you could show her like the 80s cartoon. Like that'll be and the Secret of the Ooze, the good stuff. That's awesome, man. Well, awesome, man. I really appreciate what you do, man. Honestly, like it sounds like you got a lot going on, and you still keep this going and this vibrant. So keep doing it, man. I hope maybe me and Ev could come on together one day. That would be
for the next one. The next record,
Yeah.
let's. I can't wait to hear it, and I hope you guys come through Cleveland at one point. That'd be great. All right, man. Well, you have a good rest of the day, and I'll talk with you soon. Thank you.
Yeah, likewise, man. Pleasure. Talk to you soon. All right, peace.
Yo, Spike Spiegel here. You just listened to Zig at the Gig podcast. Keep riding the bebop. See you, Space Cowboy. Bang.